For last summer in particular, I worked on with Oron on the log structured virtual disk project. At the time of the previous summer, I had been working on LSVD for about a year at that point, and the work up till now, up till then, was specifically on. Is everybody familiar with the log structured virtual disk,
Yeah,
more or less?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then the project at the time of the previous summer was that it was able to increase the efficiency of reads and writes off of a distributed um, storage system, but mainly it was running client side at the time. There wasn't a prototype to actually run this over multiple clients or multiple servers. So the goal was essentially the previous summer to get this to run over a network where we have a server and a client. We got that to work as like a prototype version, and the goal for last summer was to actually deploy it and test it on a multiple node environment. So that was mainly what uh, I ended up working on between in Oron's team. So the general goal, and of course, of the system is just to increase the efficiency of distributed storage, the cloud using the actual log virtual disk structure. But that's sort of the big overarching goal. In general, what we just wanted to do was to polish the system and create a deployment to actually test workloads that would occur on realistic systems. And in the more long term, we wanted to also do this deployment so that it's easy to integrate it in the future with other projects in Oron's lab. Therefore, we ended up setting it up on the same nodes as other people on different projects were working on. In particular, we were using the same types of nodes as uh, people working on the D4N project were using so that we can later integrate the two together. Mainly what I was working on at the beginning of the summer was I helped transfer. Initially, what we had was the initial prototype was working with very specific versioning. And as a result, when we tried to transfer it to the same hardware nodes as we were testing D4N, as D4N was being worked on, we ran into a lot of issues of actually utilizing it on those nodes. So first I helped to actually set it up initially to try to um, use the same Ubuntu version, the same setup on a different system, but we ended up committing to setting up LSVD as uh, a project on a Docker container. And at the end of setting this up, I helped also set up the Ceph connection and surrounding infrastructure on the node, essentially doing the work of maintaining the testing environment that we were working in. Later on, as the scope of the project grew a little bit in terms of what we wanted to do with it, I was working on it with Professor Desnoyers and his student Isaac from Northeastern on a code rewrite to improve the locking structure and help to write various test cases and test the code as the modifications were made. We did a couple of times where we did the various tests, but each time we kind of deemed it that we wanted to go and move forward with different parts of the project, so we just kept rewriting the code and rewriting the code, and I was just helping throughout the process to maintain the actual nodes themselves so that they are able to run the LSVD code and that they are able to um, that we were able to get results. And I got practice both in understanding the LSVD code, helping in parts of the rewrite, and actually doing the testing for the code itself. I experimented with a bunch of other potential modifications. Basically, Oron and other people in the group would ask me to try different things. We tried to use a different protocol for the way it was working over network using the built-in NVMe over Fabric support in Ubuntu 24.04. We also ended up starting to use the SPDK performance test kit, so was able to do a lot of reading and experimentation with that. In the end, we ended up getting the deployment set up, but that was the main goal, was the deployment itself. By the end of the summer, we didn't really have enough for a research paper, but we had enough to actually see and test these things for the future. And that's what we kept starting to push for the fall, but we just kept the scope of the project slowly kept increasing and increasing. So we kept just doing more and more code rewrites or developments without really reaching a paper deadline before the end of the summer. But we were still successful in creating a working system and testing it on real nodes, communicating over a network. In the future, I don't, at this point, I am no longer working on this project, so I don't know where it has gone since, I'd say, the uh, end of December, which is at the time we wanted to still have support for multiple clients and servers, and we wanted to still integrate the system with the other projects in Orange Lab so that we can use this as one cohesive system. But since then, I'm not aware of what developments have been made since then. So, but these are still the future prospects as far as I remember them. That's mainly what I was working on at the time of last summer, was the maintenance on the LSVD project, research in different ways of potentially improving it, and helping out the PhD students and professors at the time on developing and testing the actual LSVD project on existing hardware nodes.
Oh, great.
Well, bare metal nodes.
Did you have any experimental results?
As I said, we specifically wanted to make sure that LSVD itself worked, but each time when we ended with the uh, like where we would think we would be able to start writing a paper for, we ended up expanding the project further.
Well,
Any
I don't
results?
entirely understand how this could be, but according to Peter, um, Timo and I are both on a paper submission to FAST that was sent out a week ago, even though I haven't seen any emails. So I don't quite understand that, but I guess that, and I wasn't involved in the last draft given everything else going on. But yeah, the results have turned out quite nice. It uses some of this Docker environment and the SPDK target and stuff, and it's gotten some really compelling results. I'm told, but I haven't even looked at the paper, even though it somehow was not sent out to any. There's three of us in at the BU side, and somehow our names. I would have thought we'd somehow see it because just at least for conflict of interest reasons, but
Yeah, that's the thing, is that got to I got to the point where we were able to start doing those and generating those results, but I haven't worked on the project since December. I've moved
yeah,
on.
Timo, I think you're on a paper, but I just don't understand quite how you or I don't know about it.
Yeah,
But
I
how do you
wasn't.
know LSVD was working?
Uh, we were able to just do very bare experimentation with running some of the older test cases we had
Okay,
rehashed from the old LSVD paper into the new one. From the very first one, we had a benchmark of test cases that we had run just using FIO,
okay,
and we were able to rerun those and generate similar results on the network base. But there were a couple of bugs that I remember we did run into in terms of performance that I guess, if the paper submission is going through, have been resolved since I have stopped working on the project.
So, Timo, what did you learn by that work?
Hmm?
You did this work and you talk about you built this infrastructure. You weren't actually, in the sort of creative end for most of the stuff, but did you learn stuff by building this stuff?
Yeah, I did. Honestly, right, well, a lot of the connections and understanding of how the systems actually interact with each other is currently already helping me on in my new projects that I'm working on, where I've had to set up multiple systems that uh, had to interface through various protocols, and it's the exposure to these different um, systems, communicating with different individuals on how to set them up, and figuring out some things for myself, that really is a takeaway that I took from actually helping essentially maintain and set up the system for running LSVD on the nodes that we had provided. And you're right. I was since I was the only kind of undergrad student working on this with the PhD student Isaac and professors mainly backing the creative side of it, I still was able to attain experience in uh, understanding how the system worked by actually setting it up on multiple environments because we ended up testing it on a couple of things and until something actually worked.
Do you have any, so could you summarize, there was a huge lock contention problem. Can you kind of summarize how that was solved and what the problem was exactly?
Honestly, for the lock contention problem, I do not recall the fine details. I remember that at least in the portion that I spoke with Isaac about, is there were certain parts of the system that were being caught within a very large general lock, meaning that as a result, we were having issues where uh, the system would be slowing down due to the fact that we would have unnecessary portions being blocking essentially because they were locked until new uh, until those particular parts of the system had resolved their operations. So new parts could not actually start working until those were released, while they didn't need to be locked in essence. That's very broad description, I understand. I do not fully recall the fine details as I remember talking about this last September.
Yeah. Always locking issues are where I spent half of my life working.
Yeah,
I mean, at the end, this was a cache, so what the simple solution was to hash across multiple caches based on the underlying object ID, and that gives you approach to sort of just break the lock into a whole bunch of locks. But
the object ID is unique.
yeah,
Okay,
anyhow,
nice.
thanks for all the work, Timo.
Thank you. Thanks, Timo.